from Santiago, Chile. So a little bit about me before I begin. I'm originally from the United States and I have been living in Santiago for about a year and a half. I work for a local language company, VIP Kids. I also work as a freelance copywriter and editor, so I split my time between those 3 jobs. So before I begin talking about what life is like here in Santiago, I just wanted to say that my day is pretty different because of coronavirus. For the company that I work for, I normally would go to my students' homes and teach them. Instead of that though, I teach just online to my students, so I will not be really going around the city much today since all my classes are strictly online today. Okay, so I thought I would talk a little bit about my job here in Santiago. First of all, I'm not working for VIP Kid today, but if I was, I would typically start at 7 or 7:30 to get in 4 or 5 classes. And then I also work for a language company here in Santiago. Most jobs, if you don't have a teaching degree from your home country and just a TEFL, you'll be working for a private language institute giving private classes. So this means that rather than the students coming to you, you typically go to wherever the students are. So that could be their house or their office. I teach kids right now, so I would go to their houses. I taught adults last year, and that was mostly going to their offices during their lunch breaks or early in the morning or at night to do primarily business English classes with them. My job, I have a salary that I get paid every month, but most jobs here are paid on an hourly basis. And I think classes typically range from like an hour to 90 minutes, depending on what the students want. I found my job online through Skype interviews before I came here, and that's pretty much the recommendation, is to arrive in Chile with a job because that will allow you to arrive here with the visa that you need to work. The pay for a private language institute is not super high, so a lot of teachers choose to supplement that income with teaching online or some other job, which is what I chose to do as well. If you work for a company online that teaches Chinese kids, typically you would be working in the morning, so it's actually pretty easy to work for a language company here in Santiago and also get in your hours teaching online. So I'm going to share my budget with you guys. Keep in mind that my pay is a little bit less because I only work part-time here in Santiago, and I also could make more with VIP Kid, but I don't like getting up super early, so I choose not to. So that was my budget. I'm from the US, and I think the prices are pretty comparable to what I would spend living in Kentucky, more or less. It's not super cheap, but you definitely make enough to live off of, although you may not be able to save. I also have a roommate, so we split like rent and food, which makes everything considerably cheaper, but it's definitely possible to live here on your own in like a 1-room apartment without having to split anything with a roommate. Hey, so I just ran to the bank and I thought I would come back and show you guys what my apartment looks like. I live here with my boyfriend, so we share it and we split the rent, which is really nice, but you can definitely find an apartment like this or maybe a little bit nicer for a pretty good deal here in Santiago. They're not too expensive, so let me show you around. So this is the apartment. It's a standard studio. There's the bathroom here, the kitchen, and then the bedroom. It's kind of small. We pay about 300 pesos, I think, which is not bad, and we split it. And then there's a view of the Andes that you can see right there, though it's a little hard to see today. So I found my first living situation here through Facebook. There are a lot of Facebook groups, or there's a few companies that work specifically with foreigners to help you find housing. This apartment was my boyfriend's that I just moved in with him. It's definitely cheaper living with someone, obviously. I also recommend if you work for a language company here that you try to find a place close to the metro, since you'll be doing a lot of traveling, and it can save actually a decent amount of time in your day. So while I have a break before I start work later this afternoon, I thought I would talk about two things: why I chose Chile and the visa that I'm on. I chose Chile because I wanted Spanish, which eliminated a decent amount of the world. And because I wanted 4 seasons in a place where I could have a legal work visa, which was a little bit difficult to do here in South America. Not a lot of countries have language companies that are willing to sponsor teachers, but Chile does. So for my visa, I'm here on what's called a temporary residency visa, and it lasts for 1 year and allows me to live and work here in Chile. It was sponsored by my company, and it was actually pretty easy to obtain. So the visa process starts when you look for a job. Typically you have to do that outside of Chile and I think your country of residence, because you really can't come down here on a tourist visa anymore and convert to a temporary residency visa. So once you've found a job, your company will mail you your notarized contract from here in Chile, and they will also probably send you a scanned version, which you can use to fill out the application for the actual visa on, I think, the Chilean embassy's website. The application process is pretty simple. I think I had to have a medical check, my degree, a PDF of my notarized contract, and I think an FBI background check, but I'm not super sure on that. And then you submit it and you wait to hear back. So while you're waiting to hear back about your visa application, your notarized contract should be arriving to you from Chile. Mine arrived to Kentucky, where I was living, in about 5 to 6 weeks, I think. And by that time, I had heard back from the Chilean embassy that my visa was approved. So then I went to the nearest consulate, which for me was in Chicago, and I took my notarized copy, the physical contract that I had, and I had an interview, and then they gave me my visa, and I was good to go to Chile. I know some people might be concerned about applying for a job outside the country without ever having been here. The nice thing is, even though you apply for your visa with a work contract, your visa is not tied to your contract. So if you come down here and you realize that maybe the company you chose wasn't right for you, or you found a better job, you can switch without there being any repercussions for your visa. So I did that last year. I switched companies, and it was super easy to do. It was really nice. Okay, so this question, do I have a bachelor's? Yes, I got my bachelor's in journalism, so it was not related to teaching English, and while I was finishing up my bachelor's degree, I took the ITA online course. I'm not sure if a bachelor's is required to teach here in Chile. I think they asked me for mine, so I think it might be, but I'm not super sure about that one. So am I saving for retirement? This is a good question. I'm not specifically saving for retirement right now, but I do try to save about $200 to $300 US a month that I guess would not be specifically for retirement, but would help me out if I needed. I will say I'm only able to save that much money because I have another job working online. So I would not be making or saving that much if I was just working here in Chile. So do I prefer kids or adults? I have taught both. This year I'm teaching only kids, and last year I taught only adults, and I definitely prefer kids. I think they're more fun. You can play games with them. The classes that I teach with kids, they're also more focused on conversation and game-like learning, as opposed to adults where it's more conversation-based but also grammar-specific. Another big difference between kids and adults, at least here in Chile, is that all of my students take English at school. So I am not their primary English teacher. These are more supplemental classes where they can practice what they have learned and get one-on-one help, as opposed to in a classroom setting. So I talked about this a little bit earlier, how I chose Chile, but this was my first English teaching job, and this is the first country that I've lived abroad in. I found that they're actually really welcoming to new teachers, so this was a nice place to start out. So I started searching for my online job with VIP Kid, with ITA's online teaching little layout that has all the companies. VIP Kid was the first one that I interviewed with, and they hired me, so that was really nice. I chose VIP Kid because I wanted the flexibility to not have a set schedule every week. I wanted to be able to take off whenever I wanted, which is really nice. So to get my job at the language company, I did it while I was in the US, so I sent out emails to quite a few companies with my resume, or I filled out their online applications, and then I interviewed with them all via Skype. The interviews were pretty easy. It was just talking about myself. I think one of them had me do a demo class, but that was also not super hard, even though I didn't have much teaching experience at that point. And then after interviewing with a few, I decided on the one that I liked the best. So are there other VIP Kid teachers in Santiago? There are a few, and I know there are a few spread throughout Chile. I was actually supposed to go to my first Santiago VIP Kid meetup, and then coronavirus hit, so I know there's some. There's a huge foreigner community here in Santiago. There are also a lot of Facebook groups you can join that host meetups or other events, well, pre-coronavirus, that were a really great place to meet people, so that's what I used when I first got. I found my job through ITA's list of recommended schools for Chile. I think I looked specifically in the Santiago area, and then I just sent out emails to most of them. I think most of those schools are still open. So what are the weather and lifestyle like? The weather is actually, it doesn't get super cold. It does get kind of hot. So I'm from Kentucky and I find it comparable to that. But overall, I really like the weather. As for the lifestyle, it seems more laid back than my life in the United States. Chileans work a lot. The work week is, I think, 45 hours, but that's not the same for teachers. But it's pretty laid back. The people are really friendly. You're definitely able to have a good work-life balance here if you work here as an ESL teacher, especially if you just work Monday through Friday, which I think most teachers do. Okay, so it's about 6:20 here in Santiago, and I finished work and I'm now going to the park. So I thought I would show you guys a little bit about what Santiago looks like. So what other cities have I traveled to? Within Chile, it's really cheap to travel from city to city. There are buses, and the plane fares are actually not that expensive. So as a result, I've been able to travel to quite a few. There's a few beaches that are within like a 2-hour bus ride that I've done, and then I went down south to an island called Chiloé, which was beautiful. In terms of international travel, traveling country to country in South America is not super cheap. You can get cheap flights between Peru and Chile on a budget airline, and you can take a bus to the border of Argentina for a pretty reasonable price, but the rest of the countries, like Ecuador or Colombia, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, probably a couple $100s, because they don't have super cheap budget airlines that fly between them. But it is easy to travel to them if you are willing to pay the ticket. So I briefly considered Spain, but I was not super interested in it because I wanted a job where I had a little bit more freedom than working as a language assistant. But I do think the program sounds really good if you're interested in going to Spain, and I know people who have done it and have really enjoyed it. I was just more interested in the things that I read about South America. Okay guys, so it's night here in Santiago, so I am going to sign off. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this was helpful if you're interested in Santiago. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, feel free to shoot me a message at my personal Instagram account @TheBestDilemma, and I will do my best to answer it. Ciao!